whiplash, which resulted in a cut near Davey's eye. Tommy was a decorated sportsman too, having fought for world featherweight titles for a number of sanctioning bodies. In the aftermath of Davey's fatal fight, Tommy tearfully told a television crew that he was giving up boxing as a consequence of his brother's death. It was a big commitment to make publicly, particularly after a lifetime in the sport. It came across like Tommy had been dealt a massive reality check about the dangers boxing entailed. My heart went out to him and to the rest of Davey's family, but I also found it odd that people so intimately acquainted with the fight game appeared to have never considered the possibility that something like this might happen. Davey's story was tragic, but there was another reason his death rattled me. When I heard about it, I had been training to fight. The way I felt while boxing was something that I had only ever caught glimpses of in any of the other sports I'd tried. Something visceral and deep-set drove me. It was the adrenaline rush that came with dodging a well-thrown punch, the satisfactory thwack as a gloved fist hit square on its intended target, the buoyant elation when all the elements, determination, grueling repetition, pent-up energy, focus and discipline, fell into place in an explosion of controlled force. When it was done well, the sport had the physical presence, choreography and grace of a dance, and the catharsis of a symphonic crescendo. It was also transformative. I had only been boxing for a few weeks before I found that I was quickly becoming fitter than I'd ever been. I hadn't taken up the sport to lose weight, but that was happening too. I was getting stronger and becoming more confident in my own body, in the space I inhabited in the world. Being a 20-something woman in a boxing gym, an inevitably brash, rough, masculine space, had an effect on my presence of mind and my sense of self-confidence that I hadn't expected. I was living in Melbourne at the time, and after training I would catch the dodgy 57 tram home with the drunks and the junkies, feeling like I had a force field around me. The dark streets and late-night commutes that used to make me feel anxious, I embraced with a new sense of purpose. Of course I knew it was a sport in which people could and did get seriously hurt. There were stories in every gym, the kind that fell somewhere between personal testimony and myth. The trainer with the slightly wonky gaze who'd caught an unlucky blow to the eye socket. The old fella who still hung around the bags decades after his last fight, telling the youngsters, in his slightly slurred way, to keep their chin down and their gloves up. It wasn't just the old guard either. At the first amateur fight I went along to watch, one of the guys I'd trained next to in the gym lost his debut match by knockout. His opponent caught him square on the nose with a hard right hand just before the bell rang at the end of the third round, and he lost consciousness briefly, staggering backwards and falling into the ropes. While he felt no desire to get into the ring himself, my partner, Jeff, saw how elated it made me and cheered me along from the sidelines as I got more and more interested in the sport. I found new things to talk about with my youngest brother David, who had been boxing for a couple of years longer than I had. He was fighting in the amateurs every few months, and I'd go along to watch him whenever I could. I knew that people died from boxing, but in that first year or so of training, I put it out of my mind. My trainers assured me the sport was safe. My brother didn't exactly dismiss the dangers, but he didn't seem to let them worry him. None of the friends I had at the gym ever talked about hits to the head as being a health concern, only a tactical one. Was I overthinking it? Perhaps it wasn't really as bad as people were led to believe. Still, every now and then it played on my mind in a way I couldn't quite shake. There was no real need for me to sign up for a contest myself. I could have just stuck with the training if I felt uneasy about a proper fight. But I felt like there wasn't much point to being a boxer if you weren't willing to push yourself, to test yourself in the ring at least once. So I made up my mind to convince my trainer to take me seriously, to get me ready for a contest. I was committed. I was prepared for the long, grinding months of training. I knew what I was getting into. And then Davey Browne died. To say that the story rattled me was something of an understatement. He was my age. He was